Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the firestorm that's engulfing Iran. And let me tell you, this is so much more than just another protest. What we're seeing is a fundamental clash, right? A collision between a people who are absolutely demanding change and a regime that's fighting for its very survival. We're going to use the source material to break it all down. The economic spark that lit the fuse, the brutal crackdown that followed, and the huge societal shifts happening just under the surface. So let's just jump right in. What you're looking at is a nation at a flashpoint. I mean, the streets are just filled with defiance. And at the same time, the government is desperately trying to pull a digital curtain over the whole thing to black out what's really going on. Okay, this moment, this was an absolute lightning rod. You have a cleric, a man from inside the ruling establishment, standing on a street in Tehran and calling the government he represents criminal and murderer. It's no wonder this clip went viral. It just perfectly captured this feeling of dissent that was spreading, to every single corner of Iranian society. But, speaking out like that, it comes with a terrifying cost. This uprising is literally being paid for in blood. The human rights groups on the ground, they're reporting that the state's crackdown has just been absolutely lethal. We're talking security forces killing hundreds, more than 490 protesters. And here's how they're doing it. The regime is making sure all of this happens in, near total darkness. They've slammed the door shut with this unprecedented information blackout. Connectivity is down to just 1% of normal levels. It makes it incredibly difficult for the world to see what's happening and, crucially, for Iranians to organize. So the big question is, how on earth did it get to this point?
All right, so the economic spark. The answer doesn't really start with politics. It starts where these things so often do, in the pockets of ordinary people. It was a completely devastating economic crisis that was the initial spark, the thing that pushed a whole nation right to the breaking point.
In this chart, wow, this really just visualizes that crushing pressure. I mean, just try to imagine this for a second. Your total cost of living jumps by over 42% in a single year. And then, on top of that, the food you need to feed your family, that skyrockets by 72%. This wasn't some abstract number. This was the brutal daily reality for millions of Iranian families.
And that economic pain, it became very, very real when the national currency, the rial, just completely collapsed. People's life savings, gone, just wiped out. Businesses couldn't even get the imports they needed to operate. And that is what finally drove shopkeepers in Tehran's Grand Bazaar out onto the streets on December 28th. That was the first domino to fall.
But here's where things get really interesting. What started as a protest about the price of bread, it quickly, and I mean incredibly rapidly, morphed into something so much bigger.
Look at this timeline. Within just a matter of days, the movement spread like wildfire. It went from those first merchant strikes to university campuses, and then it just exploded across all 31 of Iran's provinces. The momentum got so huge that in some of the smaller towns, you had security forces who just gave up. They abandoned their posts.
And nothing shows this shift better than the slogans people were chanting in the streets. Look at the difference here. The chants completely transformed. They started with calls for, stable prices, or law enforcement, support us. Pretty soon, that was replaced by death to the dictator, and clerics must go. This wasn't about the economy anymore. This was a direct, unambiguous call to overthrow the entire system.
So, faced with a threat to its very existence, what did the state do? It responded with overwhelming and, frankly, predictable brutality. They deployed a well-worn playbook for crushing any and all dissent.
And that script is just brutally familiar, isn't it? Step 1. Blame foreign enemies. Accuse the U.S. and Israel of orchestrating the riots. Step 2. Deploy your most feared enforcers, in this case, the Basij militia and the Revolutionary Guards, to violently put down the demonstrations. Step 3. Shut down the internet to stop people from organizing. And step 4, the final, horrifying step, use lethal force. Use live ammunition on your own citizens.
And on top of the physical violence, the regime also used these heavy legal and religious threats. They started warning protesters they could be charged with moharedbe. Now, this is a really serious term. It means waging war against God. And by leveling that charge, you're essentially turning dissent into a capital crime. It's an offense that's punishable by death.
And the scale of this repression is it's staggering. It's not just the violence you see on the streets, it's the mass arrests that follow. Human rights groups are reporting that over 10,000 people, and get this, that includes children, have been detained in just 2 weeks. Okay, so this internal implosion, it isn't happening in a bubble. This crisis has dramatically ratcheted up tensions between Iran and the rest of the world, pushing the whole region, really, closer to a much wider conflict.
The United States, for its part, was especially vocal. You had then-President Trump tweeting things like, "Iran is looking at freedom, perhaps like never before. The USA stands ready to help," and behind the scenes, according to officials, he was actually being briefed on potential military options against the regime.
And Tehran's response? It was just as defiant. Iran's parliament speaker issued this really stark warning, saying, hey, if you attack us, all U.S. bases and ships will be our legitimate target, and so will Israel. I mean, that's how a domestic crisis can suddenly spiral into a full-blown international war.
But, to really get why this uprising feels so different, we have to look past the day-to-day economics and the geopolitics. We have to look at this profound, deep change that's been happening within Iranian society itself for years. Okay, this next piece of data is absolutely extraordinary. And what makes it so amazing is where it comes from. This is from a leaked confidential report that was commissioned by the Iranian government itself. And what did it find? That over 70% of Iranians support separating religion and politics. I mean, think about that. That is a direct rejection of the Islamic Republic's entire reason for being.
And yeah, the data from that same report, it paints this picture of a society that's just rapidly secularizing. You have the vast majority of Iranians saying they think religious observance has declined, and they expect it to decline even more. You can even hear it right in the slogans from the street. Things like, "Until clerics are in shrouds, the homeland will not be free." It's clear that for so many people, religion has become a private, personal matter. They now see the clerical establishment not as their spiritual guides, but as their political oppressors.
Which, of course, brings us to our final big question. What we're seeing here isn't just a protest over prices. It's a fundamental clash between an increasingly secular society and an aging, rigid clerical state. The regime, sure, it still has its iron fist, but what happens when the people have lost their faith in its divine right to rule? When a regime loses the very faith of its people, what comes after the fire? The outcome, for now, is anything but certain.